Hello class, welcome to week 3 of business communication. Here's a handful of updates I wanted to share with you and a brief overview of the assignments for the week. One thing I wanted to mention is that with the video discussions that you're commenting on each week, just want to make sure it's very clear, especially early in the term, because we've got a lot of future discussions coming, is that in order to earn full credit, you need to have one original post and respond to 2 classmates by the end of the week. Most of you are doing that. A few of you, I think early on, maybe had 1 original post and 1 comment. You just weren't getting full credit. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear in the videos that you watch and then comment on. You're going to have a minimum, right? You can certainly have more, but a minimum of 3 posts for each video in order to earn full credit, right? And those 3 posts would be at least 1 original comment. You can make as many as you want. Highly encourage that. And at least 2 responses to classmates that have something with a little bit of substance, right? It can be an affirmation. It could be a question. Hey, I really agreed, and great points. I didn't think about it that way. Thanks so much. Or it could be, hey, I saw it differently, and here's some of the reasons why, but I, can appreciate your perspective. I definitely want to make sure there's room for us to have, I think, honest dialogue. And what I don't want to have is just an unhealthy amount of people agreeing with all of the videos because they think that's what I expect, or they're not sure how else to respond. So please remember to post at least 3 times for each discussion. Separately, wanted to let you know, if you hadn't noticed already, that I published a list of project teams. Project teams won't come into play for a couple weeks, but I wanted to get the rosters out early so that you can start communicating with one another and figure out who your project manager is. So there's an announcement posted with the project team members, and I've also created a private discussion space under the discussion board where you can chat with your team if you want to. You're welcome to collaborate other ways. You could start a text thread if your team's comfortable. You can figure out a Google chat. You can email. It's really up to you. I thought I'd help you out by creating a space for just your team if that's helpful. You don't have to use it. Let me speak about this idea of the project manager just briefly. The project manager is not going to have significantly more work necessarily than everyone else, but it's inefficient, ineffective for me to be trying to communicate with the entire team, or all members in all teams. And so there are times where I might email the class and ask for your project manager to send me an update to let me know if your team's on track. I also ask that the project manager submit the assignment, right? Just one file for the whole team when there's an assignment due. And as long as you make sure everyone that participated has their name on the assignment, then everyone on that team will get the same grade, but only the project manager is going to upload it to our class shell. That makes it a lot simpler for me when I'm grading, that I don't have to cross-reference 6 times, let's say, for one team. Oh, I've already graded this paper, but I need to give the grade to these other people, right? So that way, one project per assignment, per team, and just to make it less confusing, only the project manager is going to turn in the final product. Other than that, essentially the project manager, right, is a fully contributing team member. You can figure out your own team norms, but they're not the boss. They're not necessarily in charge. But like a lot of work teams, it makes sense, even for volunteer groups, to have either a spokesperson or someone who has a kind of organizational or management role just from an administrative standpoint. So hopefully that makes sense, and I think it'll make more sense functionally when we get closer to our team projects that are just a little ways down the road. So with that, I wanted to talk about week 3's assignments. Week 3, to start, you'll have a TED Talk from Simon Sinek. Simon's one of my favorite speakers. He's got one of the most, I think, watched and popular TED Talks of all time on this concept of the golden circle. This particular talk he gives has to do with trusting teams and building trust and I think motivation alignment. So I think you'll enjoy it. And I strongly suggest, if you haven't already, that you explore some of the other talks or books that he's written. He's a really dynamic thinker, and I enjoy the way he approaches things. The second video this week is on emotional intelligence. And while a lot of our videos, like this Simon Sinek video this week, are more of a presentation, I'll call it, right? Where it's like a keynote or a speaker who's speaking to the audience, and less of a content delivery. The second video from Kara Ronan is much more, I would say, instructional in nature, where she does a wonderful job of just presenting basic information and I think elemental aspects of emotional intelligence. She defines it, she gives some suggested activities, and she talks about what can happen if you're successful in practicing emotional intelligence, and she talks about some of the shortcomings. So just a great kind of level set for all of us on emotional intelligence. And I love the topic. You can go really deep into it. I love that it's the softer side of human interactions and people skills. And if you look at business literature or like the study of management in the U.S. in general, and these, pioneers of business, for many, many decades, early business research and best practices and leaders had a lot to do with what I would call more of like the science of business. And think about production lines and how do you maximize output in a warehouse. And it really didn't take into account, in a lot of ways, the human element, right? How do you motivate teams and different leadership styles that can have a negative impact on productivity? And so I love that we've kind of come full circle to what I believe is more of a balanced approach to business and leadership and management, where we acknowledge that there are production goals and that you have to be efficient. But sometimes there are unintended consequences if you're pushing so hard on efficiency that you don't realize that your team's not motivated, and so they work at half speed. Or if they're pushed too hard, they might just resent leadership. And if that's the case, maybe they don't stay. I mean, there's a lot of turnover at your company. And so with emotional intelligence, right, it's kind of this superpower, I call it, where we can see hidden signs and signals in settings where we don't know people well, right? Think about a master negotiator who goes into a boardroom and is negotiating and just looking for nonverbal communication cues, right? Do people look stressed, or are they looking around, or are they frustrated, right? What's their body language saying? And so regardless of whether or not you have what we call high EQ naturally, right? EQ is another short abbreviation for emotional intelligence, right? Some of us maybe are more adept naturally at noticing nonverbal and other cues with people, and others of us, for a variety of reasons, it's not something we key in on. Wherever you're at today, you can absolutely improve. And I would argue or encourage you, the higher your EQ, the more information you're going to have, and hopefully the more, I think, healthy or successful your relationships will be, both personally, professionally, etc., right? If you're a manager and you've got an employee that you need to have complete a deadline, and you don't notice when you walk by that employee that they look super upset and they're distracted or crying, right? That would be missed opportunity, right? Maybe that employee has a personal crisis and they could use some help. Or maybe that employee's mad about something that happened at work and they're not going to focus on the project. And you might be able to help them if you notice it. But if you are completely ignorant of the signs that are there, you might not have the opportunity. So all that to say, fun topic, and this is a great place to start if it's new to you. Okay, so those are our two discussions this week. Let's move on to the other two assignments. The first assignment is called What We Do Not Say. And what we do not say is essentially an opportunity to go observe several interactions, at least 3, during your week, and take some notes or make some mental notes on some of the nonverbal communication cues that you're seeing. And so I'm not going to read the whole assignment details, but essentially you're going to analyze these different situations and then write up some of your thoughts. How did the nonverbal cues affect the meaning or tone of the interaction? There are moments when the nonverbal communication contradicted the verbal message, right? That'd be like the idea of me saying, I'm not mad. My word choice, right? The content, I'm saying I'm not mad, but the delivery or the nonverbal cues, right, with body language or volume or facial expression can sometimes completely contradict what we're saying. So, fun activity. There's not really a right or wrong. It's just getting you comfortable practicing and maybe analyzing nonverbal cues much more intentionally or thoroughly than you might do on your own just subconsciously, right? So have fun with it. I would definitely encourage you to make sure that at least 1 or 2 of the interactions you watch are real life, right? People you know. You just don't get as rich of an experience to analyze if you're watching a video or recording or something that doesn't have live people actually having a live interaction. And then last but not least, the final assignment for this week is related to emotional intelligence. So there are 5 components of emotional intelligence, and I highly encourage you to do some research on emotional intelligence and some of the research that's gone into it. Great place to start is the second video for this week from Kara Ronan. So I highly recommend that you don't even attempt or maybe read the details on this assignment until you've watched the video on emotional intelligence for this week. But once you've watched the video, feel a little more comfortable, maybe done a little bit of research on your own, the assignment for you is to create an infographic that briefly describes each component of emotional intelligence, and then maybe has some visual elements that help explain them. So infographics, let me explain a little bit more what an infographic is. An infographic is sometimes a really simple or sometimes a really complex chart or like visual representation of some information. And so, for example, if I wanted to teach you how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I could write an essay describing what goes into it, how you prepare it, right? And that would be one way to explain to someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and what the ingredients are. Or, different idea is you could create an infographic, and maybe for a lot of you, you've seen examples in magazines or in the newspaper or maybe on social media, if that's a source that you get news from. But an infographic is like a visual way to present information that makes it a little more interesting, usually more colorful, and it's a great way to help people digest information instead of just reading text. So back to my peanut butter and jelly sandwich example. I could write an essay, that would be one way. I could record a video and I could explain it to you. Or an infographic might have pictures of the ingredients, right? It might have a picture of jelly, it might have a picture of peanut butter, there might be a picture of the bread, and there might be a picture of the knife that you need to spread everything and cut it. And then there's often like bullet points and written information, but it's a lot more visual and easier to absorb than just text. You can create infographics in PowerPoint. Canva is another great option. CANVA, Canva, they have free online tools. It's basically a web-based design tool that's starting to take over for PowerPoint. I also looked, and I think that Adobe has a free infographic tool, and you're welcome to use any tool you see fit. Some of you that have design backgrounds might have some professional tools that I haven't listed, or you might want to do it by hand. I certainly can't draw, and that wouldn't be, I think, fun or turn out well, but for some of you, you might just want to draw something up. So you're going to put together an infographic that explains these basic components of emotional intelligence. And then, in addition, you're going to put together kind of a visual map, right, of your own strongest emotional intelligence components. And so think about it this way. This can be an entire second infographic, or just maybe a couple other images and text that are sharing with me which of these topics you believe, right, you're kind of self-assessing that you're strongest at. So have fun with it. Please send me questions. I recognize that this is a little bit non-traditional, but as we go through the course, I'm trying to challenge you and give you the opportunity to have fun with some different types of assignments, right? We've got collaborative assignments in groups. We've got discussions. There's already been writing assignments. And doing some, call it light graphic design, or just, using the artistic skills that we have, I thought would be a fun way to express yourself. So please reach out with any questions. I'm here to help, and I hope you have a great week. Thanks.